Good morning, everybody. I want to say thank you to all of you for being here, to the NUX team for having me. I'm excited to be here. I have to apologize. I don't have cowboy boots or cool videos, but I'll do my best to keep it interesting. So I'm going to talk to you about the strategy, governance, and adoption approaches and the best practices that are emerging across industry and government. I'm going to talk to you about AI definitions, just to set a little bit of a baseline. For folks, I think it's helpful to do that. We're going to talk about some of the transformative impact that AI is likely to have going forward. A little bit about the policy and regulatory environment, the importance of an AI strategy for enterprises. How do we think about AI governance, frameworks, policies, oversight committee charters, things like that? And how do we think about AI adoption roadmaps? And some concluding thoughts, pulling some of those things together. So real quick, let's just go through some definitions. We can think of analytics as the application of statistical analysis to data and operations to gain insights and solve problems. We can think of AI as the science of engineering computers and machines to simulate or surpass human cognitive capabilities. And we can think of machine learning as kind of at the intersection of advanced analytics and AI, as a subset of AI, methodologies that can learn from data to help predict outcomes, classify information, and detect patterns. And we can think of all this together as data science. It's a cross-functional discipline that combines all of these elements with domain expertise to solve problems with data-driven insights. So here's a quote from a recent article. It says, "Imagine a world where everything from plastics to concrete is produced from biomass. Personalized cell and gene therapies prevent pandemics and treat previously incurable genetic diseases. Meat is lab-grown and enhanced nutrient grains are climate resistant." Just last year, lab-grown meat production and sale was approved by the US for the first time. Google's DeepMind predicted structures of over 2 million new materials. And the first commercial gene editing treatment using CRISPR was also approved. So we can think of AI as having had a tremendous impact in advancing scientific research, medical research, innovation, and science, particularly in areas like genomics, bioinformatics, materials science, climate science. And we can expect it to have even greater impact by orders of magnitude in the years ahead. AI is going to further accelerate truly exponential change in additional areas like quantum computing, neuroscience, and even just how we think about education and teaching our children or teaching ourselves, and how we learn to work with AI as a partner. As human beings, we're pretty good at predicting incremental change, but we're not very good at predicting exponential change, or when things change by orders of magnitude. And that's when we get surprised. And we're going to get surprised a lot in the years ahead. I was at another conference a couple of weeks ago. Brad Lightcap, the chief operating officer of OpenAI, was there on a panel. And we were having a discussion about some of the upcoming models that OpenAI has in production. And there's no question that the cognitive capabilities of the models that you'll see coming out in the next year or two are going to be orders of magnitude greater than anything we're seeing right now. So the capabilities will be there, but whether or not the impact will be there and how long it takes the impact to come is probably a matter of a few different dynamics at play. One of those is governance and regulation. Will the regulation be there, especially for regulated sectors? And I'll talk about that a little bit. Organizational positioning. Will enterprises be mature enough or positioned in a way to actually adopt and take advantage of the capabilities that will be coming. And the third, I think, is just even our imagination as human beings. Can we really imagine the ways that such power can be applied, whether broadly or within our specific mission environments or work environments? Even now, I think with models like ChatGPT 4.0, there's already so many uses that we could be putting those models to that we just haven't thought of yet necessarily in our daily lives. There's so many efficiencies we can gain from a broader application of those models that we're just not using yet, we're not taking advantage of yet. So now imagine models that are hundreds, thousands of times more powerful than that. It's going to take us some time to figure out how we can use them efficiently. So there's something that I think about a lot, and this is what I call the growing AI governance gap. And this is the first area that I mentioned that can significantly limit impact, especially in regulated sectors. And so what happens in an environment like this is the governance gap is a result of a situation where AI capabilities are evolving very quickly and much faster than regulators can keep up, ultimately creating a multi-billion-dollar bottleneck in regulated sectors. One of the reasons this happens is because organizations, regulated sectors included, and others, tend not to have the internal expertise necessary to be able to quickly stand up a governance structure to adopt advanced technologies safely, efficiently, without first having the governance, the guardrails, the regulations in place. If you're a private sector organization that doesn't have to worry about heavy regulation, unlike healthcare, finance, government, you can take on a lot more risks. You can adopt more risky technologies more quickly. But if you're a government agency or an academic medical center, you really have to wait until you have the appropriate guardrails in place before you can adopt a technology. Just as an example, a number of academic medical centers throughout this country have banned their physicians from using ChatGPT for work. Some have tried to use softer policies where they're saying, please don't use it until there's a clear policy in place on how to use it safely. But that's just an example of how that kind of adoption is getting slowed down. And the regulatory environment is evolving very rapidly. We had the AI executive order last year in October. Over 40 states, I think over 45 states, have introduced legislation for AI governance just this year. And we've had a flurry of international activity around regulation, so a lot of organizations in regulated sectors are kind of waiting to see what happens. There have also been executive orders from governors in states ordering all public agencies to cease adoption of AI until they've got certain processes in place. So clearly, while technology is accelerating in its capabilities, regulated sectors in some ways are actually slowing down their adoption. And so this is, I think, a big problem for all of us to think about. So I want to talk a little bit about the AI executive order and a few specific things there. So it's broadly focused on ensuring safety. There are certain requirements going into the private sector for developers. And by the way, I managed a committee that produced the previous AI executive order focused on trustworthy use in the federal government. This new executive order extends those provisions across the government and also extends provisions into the private sector as well. So it's also looking at things like protecting against fraud and deception, supporting privacy-preserving technologies. But some of the key things, some of the key requirements that came out of it for federal agencies, all federal agencies now have to have an AI governance board. They have to maintain an AI inventory, an inventory of all their applications in use across the agency. And they have to have a chief AI officer in place as well to help lead those governance and adoption efforts and coordinate across government. Having an inventory is a really good idea, and it's important for two reasons. One, it's just a good idea. It's the old adage that you can't manage what you don't measure. And most organizations don't manage their AI as a portfolio and don't think of it comprehensively in that way. It's a lot of scattershot investments, no real tracking of value or even cost. AI budgets are typically buried within larger IT budgets and very rarely carved out for any kind of AI, ML-specific cost-benefit analysis. So it's just a good idea to know what you have, what you're investing in, having a clear perspective on it, excuse me, knowing how it's performing. The second reason is that for federal agencies, it's required. It's a matter of compliance. A lot of these state bills have also included language in there about having to have inventories of AI. A lot of large universities, especially those that are publicly funded, are thinking about how do we develop comprehensive inventories to make it clear to all of us, our stakeholders, what it is that we actually have. So, getting down to the more practical level of some of these things now, enterprises should have a clear AI strategy, ideally a written strategy that helps to create a compelling narrative for internal and external stakeholders around the key questions of why should we use AI in the first place? It may seem like an easy question, but answering in the right way can be challenging, actually. How will we ensure safety of our AI use? And this is where AI governance comes in. What use cases should we pursue? There are a lot of different options, a lot of technologies, a lot of capabilities. Nuix has been developing a lot of those. So which ones should we pursue and how do we make those decisions? And this is where a well-structured AI adoption roadmap comes into place. And then how do we think about and really leverage AI as a source of value, innovation, and competitive advantage in our sectors? So a strategy is going to answer some of these questions, and it should also reflect and include an organization's core values that should be outlined and present throughout the document. And it should also have certain focus areas that are particularly important to our organization. That might include data, how we think about data governance, stewardship, which types of data do we collect and store, how do we use data. There might be a focus on workforce upskilling and education, maybe creating a new innovation center, various system integrations that may be necessary. And then there are going to be a lot of domain-specific areas, too, that will be different for different types of enterprises, but that will be important to include in a strategy. So then let's shift to governance. So for governance, we can think of, I'll back up just a little bit. We hear a lot about AI principles, responsible AI principles, AI ethics, and we've all probably seen long lists of these things coming out from different organizations. And all those things are great. They're a great place to start. But when you start thinking about how do I actually implement these things, it turns out that this long list of items actually contains a lot of very different types of things that require very different authorities, very different types of expertise to implement across very different areas of an organization. So the challenge becomes how do we organize these principles or these ideas of things that we're trying to achieve in regard to responsibility, safety, ethics. How do we actually organize them across an enterprise to be effective and to implement them practically? So we can think of risk lenses as a way to help organize this, as a way to understand the types of risks that are inherent with AI adoption and deployment. And we can also think about mitigation frameworks for those kind of risk lenses or risk verticals or risk buckets, however you want to think about it. So we can think of regulatory risks. So there's things like safety, fairness, reputation, social impact, assessing for bias, being in compliance with whatever state or federal regulations are relevant to you, apply to you. We can think of technical risks, model drift, various types of errors, downtime, technical resilience of systems, cybersecurity components, ensuring data safety, privacy, system resilience. There's a whole world at the intersection of AI and cybersecurity, a big threat landscape that's not well understood that's emerging. AI can be used to attack traditional IT systems. It can be used to attack AI systems. The more we rely on AI systems for mission-critical components, the more unique AI vulnerabilities that actually creates. AI can also be used offensively from red teaming perspectives to test vulnerabilities in our traditional IT systems, but also to test for vulnerabilities in our AI reliant systems. We can also think of financial risks. As I mentioned, scattershot investments, unproven solutions, low ROI. Most attempts at AI deployments aren't very successful across organizations, especially in regulated sectors, at relatively low percentage numbers as far as what actually gets to production from initial kind of model development or pilot. And we can think of domain-specific risks, which can be quite variable, but organizations need to identify what those are for them specifically. Then we can think of risk mitigation frameworks. So for regulatory risk, we can think of responsible AI as something that helps us to address those areas, provide risk compliance, impact evaluation, management, safety, can have IRB-like review processes, risk assessments. We can think of model ops for technical risks. This can also include red teaming, but lifecycle monitoring, assurance, auditability, real-time monitoring. We can think of portfolio management as an approach that helps provide portfolio visibility, a better understanding of ROI, a better ROI profile for the AI portfolio, and helps to build trust and accountability within the organization for continued investment in AI. And then, of course, we'll need domain-specific validation mechanisms for the domain-specific risks. So for addressing these various dimensions of risk in an organization, we can think of creating responsible AI committee, a model ops committee, portfolio management committee, and all this can kind of sit within a larger structure with some sort of oversight organization, AI governance board, AI governance committee that would include the chief AI officer, senior leaderships, and then you have the subcommittees, perhaps that regularly report into the higher level oversight committee to ensure that senior leaders, decision makers are getting that information. We can think of new roles that may be necessary. I mentioned some of these already. This would require new training, upskilling, qualifications. We can view this kind of from a phased perspective of how this kind of review is done and how these different committees participate together at various stages of the governance kind of deployment lifecycle. Again, an inventory that serves as kind of a single source of truth for everybody. Adoption roadmaps help us go from current state to future state, help us understand what we have, what we don't have, doing use case discovery and prioritization, technology readiness assessment, understanding our resource constraints, and ultimately ensuring that we're operationalizing the high potential use cases. So I think the future is quite bright, with AI set to transform the world around us substantially. Challenges exist with validation, governance, security design, and impact. And an interesting thing I'll mention real quick is that we've had, 5 years ago, I used to talk with my MIT professors about how AI is going to replace tasks, not jobs. Now, with the advent of Gen AI, large language models, we're starting to see AI starting to take some jobs. I'm seeing professors no longer hiring research assistants, folks cutting back on marketing departments, newsrooms cutting back on folks doing copy and all these kinds of things. 5 years from now, even probably 2 years from now, we're going to be seeing AI agents that are capable of ingesting multiple types of data, are capable of multimodal functions. I can say, hey, please go and do some research on this topic, create a great slide deck, and financial projections for the next 7 years. And the model will do it instantly. So I think junior investment bankers, junior consultants, their jobs are clearly at risk. So for our kids and for our future, what does that mean? If you don't get the opportunity to develop certain skill sets early on in your career, what do you do? Well, I think the answer is you have to learn how to pair up with AI to be effective. You've got to be a person that can manage 10 AI agents effectively in order to be competitive in the job market of the future. So some interesting things for us to think about, but ultimately, I think we'll be able to tackle these challenges, especially through open innovation, open collaboration, responsible governance. We've got a very good shot at creating a future that's going to be safe and where the benefits of AI can be recognized by humanity. Thank you very much.